In the heart of Lagos, where wealth and status determined one's fate, Vanessa Williams lived a life many could only dream of. She was the adopted daughter of Chief and Madam Williams, one of the wealthiest families in the city. Their mansion stood like a palace, with golden chandeliers, Italian marble floors, and a fleet of luxury cars parked outside. Vanessa had everything: beauty, elegance, and an education from the best schools abroad. But she had one problem: she wasn't truly their blood. Though Chief and Madam Williams treated her like their own, their biological children, Stephanie and Richard, never let her forget that she was different. "You're just lucky we took you in," Stephanie would often remind her with a smirk. Richard, on the other hand, barely acknowledged her existence. Despite their coldness, Vanessa carried herself with grace. But then, everything changed on her 25th birthday. That evening, the family hosted a grand party at their estate: golden drapes, chandeliers sparkling like diamonds, and a guest list filled with Lagos elites. She wore a stunning emerald gown, a custom-made designer piece that hugged her curves perfectly. Everyone admired her, but beneath her poised smile, she felt a storm brewing. When the time came for Chief William's speech, he stood up, raising a glass of champagne. "Tonight, we celebrate my beloved daughter, Vanessa," he announced. "And, as tradition demands, she must now be betrothed." Vanessa's heart dropped. Betrothed? She expected to be paired with a wealthy businessman, or a foreign investor's son. After all, she was practically royalty in Lagos high society. But then, Chief Williams continued, "She will marry David Johnson." A murmur swept through the crowd. David Johnson. Everyone knew him. A poor, struggling mechanic from the mainland. A man with no wealth, no social standing, and no business connections. He wasn't even from their world. Vanessa's hands trembled. Her stepsister, Stephanie, laughed under her breath, clearly enjoying the humiliation. "But, why?" Vanessa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Chief William's gaze was stern. "Because we took you in when you had nothing. It's time for you to repay us." Repay? Vanessa felt the walls closing in. They never saw her as family. She was just a debt to be settled. And just like that, her glamorous life crumbled before her eyes. The murmurs in the grand hall grew louder, as Vanessa stood frozen, her emerald gown suddenly feeling like a prison. The chandeliers above gleamed, casting golden reflections on the polished marble floor, but all she could hear was the deafening silence in her own mind. Marry a poor man? A mechanic? It was impossible. She turned to Madam Williams, her adoptive mother, hoping to see some sort of regret in her eyes. But there was none. Instead, the woman sipped her wine, looking bored, as if Vanessa's shock was nothing but a minor inconvenience. "You should be grateful," Stephanie whispered, leaning in. "At least you won't die alone." A ripple of laughter spread among the elite guests as whispers and side glances filled the room. Vanessa clenched her fists. So this was their plan all along. To dress her in luxury, parade her like a princess, only to remind her that she would never truly be one of them. David Johnson, the man she was being forced to marry, stood awkwardly at the far end of the room. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and undeniably handsome, but his suit was worn, and his polished shoes had clearly been cleaned too many times. He didn't belong here, and neither, it seemed, did she. Chief Williams tapped his glass, demanding attention. "The wedding will be in 2 weeks. That is final." Vanessa's breath hitched. 2 weeks. She turned to Richard, her adoptive brother, the only one in the family who had never openly mocked her. Maybe, just maybe, he would speak up. But he looked away, swirling his whiskey, pretending not to notice her distress. Vanessa felt sick. As the party continued around her, guests clinking glasses and whispering about the scandalous marriage, she slipped out of the hall. Her designer heels clicked against the expensive tiles as she made her way to the balcony. The Lagos skyline stretched before her, neon lights flickering in the distance, but her world had never felt smaller. Then, a deep voice interrupted her thoughts. I didn't ask for this either. She turned sharply. David. Up close, he looked even more out of place. His tie was slightly loose, his hands tucked into his pockets like a man who knew he didn't belong. But his eyes weren't weak. Vanessa crossed her arms. Then why are you here? David sighed, leaning against the balcony rail. Because when a man like Chief Williams gives you an order, you don't say no. Vanessa frowned. He has no power over you. David chuckled, shaking his head. You think so? He looked her in the eyes. I may be poor, but I'm not stupid. Your father, he stopped himself, correcting, your adoptive father owns half of Lagos. My business, my workshop, everything I have, he controls it. If I refuse this marriage, I lose everything. Vanessa's stomach twisted. So this wasn't just about her. Then we are both prisoners, she muttered. David studied her for a moment. Maybe. But I don't plan on staying one forever. Something in the way he said it made Vanessa pause. There was a fight in him, something she didn't expect. She had spent her whole life being told she was lucky to be in this family, lucky to be taken in, lucky to be given everything. But if this was what luck looked like, she wanted no part of it. She turned to David, her mind racing. Then we need a plan. David raised a brow. A plan? Vanessa exhaled slowly. I refuse to let them ruin my life. If we're getting married, she met his gaze, determination flickering in her eyes, then we are going to do it on our own terms. David smirked slightly, intrigued. Now that sounds interesting. Vanessa stood on the balcony, the Lagos skyline stretching before her like a glittering kingdom she no longer belonged to. Beside her, David folded his arms, watching her carefully. You said we need a plan, he said. What do you have in mind? Vanessa exhaled. If we let them control this marriage, they'll control everything. My freedom, your future, our lives. But if we play this smart, we can flip the script. David tilted his head, intrigued. Go on. Vanessa's mind raced. There had to be a way to turn this forced marriage into an advantage. We make them regret this, she said, her voice steady. We make them think they've won, but in reality, we'll be the ones holding the power. David chuckled, rubbing his jaw. That sounds good in theory, but in practice? These people are ruthless. Vanessa smirked. Then we have to be smarter. David studied her for a moment before nodding. All right. I'm in. What's the first step? Vanessa turned back to the city lights. If they were going to play this game, they needed to start now. The next morning. By sunrise, news of Vanessa's engagement had already hit social media. Williams' heiress forced to marry a common mechanic. Lagos elite shocked by scandalous engagement. Stephanie, of course, was loving the drama. She sat at the breakfast table, scrolling through comments, laughing at every mocking remark. She probably cried herself to sleep, she mused. Just then, the doors swung open. Vanessa walked in. But something was different. She wasn't sad. She wasn't embarrassed. She was glowing. Dressed in a sleek designer outfit, her makeup flawless, she walked like a queen, her confidence filling the room. As if she had just won. Chief Williams frowned, lowering his newspaper. What's with the outfit? Vanessa smiled sweetly. Can't a bride-to-be enjoy herself? Stephanie's face twisted in confusion. You should be devastated. Vanessa took a seat, delicately buttering her toast. Why would I be? I have a handsome fiancé, a beautiful wedding to plan, and a future to build. Life is amazing. Chief Williams narrowed his eyes. He knew manipulation when he saw it. He murmured. Are you up to something? Vanessa sipped her tea, giving him an innocent look. Why would I be? Just then, a car horn blared outside. A sleek, custom-made black Mercedes Maybach pulled up in front of the mansion. The butler rushed to the door. David stepped out. But this wasn't the same David from last night. Gone was the struggling mechanic in a worn-out suit. In his place stood a man dressed in a tailored navy blue designer outfit, his fresh haircut sharp, his shoes shining. He walked up to the entrance with the confidence of a king. The entire table fell silent. Stephanie almost choked on her coffee. What was happening? Vanessa set down her tea, rising gracefully. My fiancé is here. Excuse me. She stepped outside, where David stood, waiting. It was all part of the plan. Damn, David muttered under his breath as Vanessa approached. That entrance was something else. Vanessa smirked. We have to play the part. David glanced over his shoulder, seeing Stephanie peeking through the window, her mouth hanging open. I think it's working. Vanessa slid her arm into his. Then let's make them sweat. As they walked back inside, one thing was clear, this wasn't going to be a forced marriage anymore. This was war. As Vanessa and David walked into the grand dining hall, every eye was on them. The once poor mechanic now carried himself like Lagos royalty, and Vanessa, the supposed outcast, was glowing with confidence. Stephanie shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her fingers tightening around her phone. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Chief Williams, however, was no fool. He studied David with sharp eyes. Interesting, he said, setting down his teacup. You've changed overnight. David smiled coolly. A man must rise to the occasion when he's about to marry into one of the most powerful families in Lagos. Chief Williams chuckled, though his expression was unreadable. Indeed. Vanessa slid into her seat, unbothered. We'll be going out today, Daddy. I need to introduce David to a few people. Stephanie scoffed. Introduce? Who on earth would want to associate with her? Vanessa cut her off with a sharp smile. Oh, you'll see soon enough. Chief Williams studied them both before nodding. Fine. But remember, Vanessa, this wedding is happening whether you like it or not. Vanessa leaned forward, meeting his gaze. Oh, I know. She tilted her head slightly. But the question is, on whose terms? A flicker of something unreadable crossed Chief Williams' face before he waved them off. Do as you please. Vanessa took David's hand. Shall we? David smirked. Let's. The first stop was one of the most exclusive lounges in Lagos, the Aurelius Club, where only the city's richest and most powerful gathered. When Vanessa and David walked in, conversation stopped. People turned, eyes widening in shock. Some whispered, some scoffed, but everyone was watching. Vanessa, ever the strategist, had called the press. Photographers, socialites, and bloggers were already there, their cameras flashing as Vanessa held David's hand like he was the most powerful man in the room. She walked him over to Senator Ajayi, a family friend who controlled multiple business sectors in Nigeria. Senator, Vanessa greeted warmly. Meet my fiancé, David Johnson. The senator, who had read the humiliating headlines about David, raised a brow. Ah, the famous fiancé. David smiled, but it wasn't the nervous, unsure smile of a man out of place. No, this smile was bold, confident, almost dangerous. Pleasure to meet you, sir, David said, extending his hand. The senator hesitated. Then, after a brief moment, he shook David's hand. The cameras flashed. Vanessa smiled to herself. Perfect. One by one, she introduced David to every important person in the room, making sure every handshake, every smile, and every conversation was captured by the press. Within hours, the narrative had changed. Could Vanessa's fiancé be a secret millionaire? David Johnson, the dark horse of Lagos society. The poor mechanic who walked into wealth like he owned it. Stephanie saw the news online and screamed. The next morning, Chief Williams summoned Vanessa and David to his study. "Sit," he ordered. They did. Chief Williams folded his hands. "I don't know what game you two are playing, but you forget who owns the board." His tone was controlled but threatening. "You think dressing him up and getting his name in the news changes anything?" David leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "It does, actually." Chief Williams narrowed his eyes. "Explain." David reached into his pocket, pulling out a document. He placed it on the table. Chief Williams picked it up, his face darkening as he read. Vanessa smirked. "While everyone was laughing at my poor fiancé, David was making moves. See, Daddy, you control a lot of businesses in Lagos. But you overlooked something." David leaned back, crossing his arms. "Your competitor, Mr. Hassan, was more than happy to back me." Chief Williams' grip on the document tightened. David continued, "With his investment, I've acquired 3 key automotive workshops in the city, including one that services the luxury cars of Lagos elites." He smirked. "So technically, your Rolls-Royce, your Bentley, your friends' cars, they all have to come through me." Vanessa tilted her head playfully. "Oops." For the first time in years, Chief Williams looked caught off guard. Stephanie burst into the room, furious. "This is ridiculous. You think some stupid business move makes him one of us?" David turned to her, smiling lazily. "I don't need to be one of you. I just need to be above you." Stephanie's face burned with rage. Chief Williams took a deep breath. Then, slowly, he started laughing. "Well played," he admitted, placing the document down. "You might actually be useful, boy." David's expression remained unreadable. "Good to know." Chief Williams leaned forward. "But make no mistake. This game isn't over." David smirked. "I'd be disappointed if it was." Vanessa crossed her legs, her diamond bracelet catching the light. They weren't just surviving this marriage anymore. They were owning it. And this was only the beginning. Chief Williams leaned back in his chair, studying David and Vanessa. A smirk played on his lips, but his eyes remained cold. "You two think you've won?" He chuckled. "Fine. You've proven yourselves. But power isn't about one move, it's about endurance. Let's see how long you last." Vanessa rose from her seat gracefully. "Oh, we'll last. And we'll do it on our own terms." David stood beside her, his presence strong, unshaken. "This marriage may have started as your decision, but now, it's ours." Chief Williams nodded slowly. "Then I hope you're ready for the real game." Stephanie scowled, glaring at them both. But Vanessa only smiled at her, knowing she had already won the battle that mattered. 1 year later. The wedding had been a grand affair, but not in the way Chief Williams had envisioned. Vanessa and David had taken control of their narrative. They built their own empire, business influence, and reputation, independent of the Williams name. David, once mocked as a mere mechanic, was now a respected businessman, with his luxury auto empire expanding beyond Lagos. Vanessa, no longer just the adopted daughter, had built her own brand, hosting elite charity events, securing powerful partnerships, and ensuring that the Williams family name was now attached to her success, not the other way around. And Chief Williams? He had no choice but to acknowledge that the poor mechanic was no longer beneath him, but standing beside him as an equal. At a high-profile gala, Chief Williams clinked his glass, raising a toast. To Vanessa and David. You've proven yourselves far beyond my expectations. David smirked. We had a good teacher. Vanessa exchanged a knowing look with her husband. They had survived the storm, played the game, and rewritten their fate. Stephanie, watching from a distance, clenched her jaw. She had lost. Vanessa turned, meeting her glare with a victorious smile before whispering to David, checkmate. Comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe to our community. See you in our next video.